What's up, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today's video is about the top 5 best editing software of 2019. So number 1 on the list, I'm going to get right out of the way because most of you guys already know it, and it is Adobe Premiere Pro. It just seamlessly works with the rest of the Creative Cloud, things like Photoshop, Illustrator, Lightroom, and even After Effects. It allows for creative flow, and it is an industry standard. Everyone from Hollywood to, of course, freelancers to YouTubers use it. If you have any interest in editing, even somewhat professionally, you are somewhat expected to usually use Premiere Pro. It also makes life easier because it has everything built in, everything from being able to do VR to graphic templates to being able to use the Lumetri colors that are built in to even more advanced color correction with additional software that you can connect directly with Premiere Pro. Everything from color grading to audio tweaking is built directly into Premiere, and because it is so used everywhere, you can find LUTs and everything all over the web, and you can find a trillion tutorials. So although there is a decent learning curve, you can usually get the hang of it pretty quick. Number 2 on the list is, of course, our Final Cut Pro X, which is also another obvious choice by a lot of people. The reason it isn't number 1 is because it just isn't as seamless with everything else. You know, like a lot of people in the professional industry and even like YouTube, if you're making thumbnails and things, you want things to kind of connect, and you're usually using things like Photoshop, and connecting like Final Cut to Photoshop is just not as seamless, you know? So that's just my little take on that. But with that said, Final Cut Pro X is still amazing. It also has all the modern tech that you need, like 360 video editing and VR headset playback. It has everything from being able to tweak motion graphics to, of course, render times. Now this is where I would argue that Final Cut Pro shines. Its render times are like half of what Premiere's render times are, and it crashes like 10 times less. Like when I'm doing like full-on editing on the go, and I know that my laptop is going to heat up, I never launch Premiere Pro unless I started a project in Premiere Pro on like a desktop or something. Usually I prefer, when it comes to a laptop, to edit on Final Cut Pro X. It just makes a lot more sense because on one screen it just looks so much nicer, and I know I can edit a lot faster. And usually I would argue, even because I am on a Mac OS operating system, the Final Cut is just optimized a lot better to work with Mac OS usually. I can't really full-on prove that, but there's a lot of other YouTube videos on that as well. So performance-wise, it wins, and then it has everything that you usually need, like your timecode window, your noise reduction, has multicam support. It's professional when you need it, but it's fairly simple. While there is a decent learning curve, it isn't as complicated as maybe Premiere can be. Next off, we have our sponsor for today, which is of course Movavi, and they come in at number 3, and I'm gonna give them the number 3 spot because of simplicity. If you're looking for something that doesn't really have a learning curve at all, and you just simply download and then you toss a bunch of files into there, and after a while you can create an all-out story for your family, maybe social media, throw on a few filters on there, download some movie packs, and make it look like you did some professional special effects when in reality the software did everything for you. In fact, it's so easy to use that it literally is like a tutorial as you first start using it. As you click through maybe the titles, as you click through media files or the timeline for the very first time, it gives you short little bubbles showing you exactly how to do that. Final Cut's not going to do that, and Premiere is not going to do that. It's just seamless. It renders nice and quick. It renders directly to YouTube if you need that, and it makes it super easy for if you're starting off on YouTube, if you're starting to make your first few videos and you're just starting to learn how to edit. You can move on to more professional software eventually, but this is a great place to start, and I would argue this is one of the best in terms of beginners. At the same time, I'm not saying you can't do professional things with this. It has everything from video stabilization to beat detection to audio recording to even webcam capture. This is something that if you guys are editing for the first time, then this is the way to go. Check out the link below, and you might even get yourself a nice solid discount. With that said, I did not actually learn how to use Premiere first. I didn't start off on Final Cut Pro X, I didn't start off on Movavi, and I didn't start off on iMovie like everyone else. My very first editing software when I started YouTube in 2009 was Sony Vegas Pro. That was the thing back in the day. Everyone was using it, everyone loved it, and over time less and less people use it now, and I even stopped using it, but it doesn't mean it got any less better. In fact, I would argue that it is even better than all the other software combined. The only downside is you just won't find as many people using it. And when you're on Mac, you just naturally use Final Cut Pro. And when you're on Windows, you just naturally use Adobe Creative Suite. Sony Vegas is something that, you know, if you bought it back in the day or you have that software and that's the only software you ever used, then this is the way to go. But it can do everything. I would say it's the most intuitive editing software out there. Maybe not for beginners and maybe not for advanced people, but if you're somewhere in the middle and maybe you are a YouTuber who just needs to throw clips in and just when you left click and you want to add an audio track, it just makes sense. When you right click on it and you add effects and your color corrector comes up, everything just does what it needs to do. So in terms of simplicity and just overall good software, it's great. The downside is Sony Vegas does have a tendency to render, like, it takes absolutely forever. On their site, they say they improved GPU and hardware, so of course maybe the latest version, which unfortunately I do not have, is a little bit better, but once again, it does support everything from HDR to video stabilization to motion tracking, and it has tons of features built into it. Last but not least, I also reviewed on this channel a little bit back Power Director 17, and one of my favorite things about this is that they made a really big focus on action cameras and of course 360 video. Now they of course have every single feature you could need, everything from chroma keying to frame by frame motion tracking, and everything is super easy. What they really are good at doing is taking these complicated things that in Premiere take you hours to set up, and then they take it into things you just drag and drop onto clips, and then afterwards you're pretty much set. It does everything on its own. You can nest different videos, you can blend different videos, and you can have even 360 video editing like I'm doing right here. Isn't that insane? So all in all, it's just does everything pretty well. The only reason that I would say that I wouldn't recommend this is that it's not really an industry standard. Its learning curve isn't that great. Its render times aren't amazing. Its ease to use isn't amazing. But once you get the hang of it, and once you go ahead and use this with things like your action camera, your 360 camera, there's no other software that can even compete with this. In fact, it has one of these features where it does the editing for you. You just toss in your clips and it adds on title cards, it adds on full-on effects and transitions, and it makes the video for you. How cool is that? So that's it for my top 5. Leave your feedback below, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. So leave a like and don't forget to subscribe. These are my top 5 editing software of 2019, and obviously I do have a little bit of bias, but I have relatively used most of these in the past, so I would like to think my opinion holds some value. With that said, thank you guys for watching. This is going to be me logging off.